So my name is Kelly Monteith. I work for AXA Group Operations, and I'm a bit embarrassed to be here working for a French company, but having to do this presentation in English. So very sorry about that. But honestly, you would not like to hear me try to speak in French. So, okay. First of all, a little bit about AXA. So AXA is a very large financial company. We've got, I have to read this from the slides. This is the only part I'm going to read from the slides properly. We operate in around the world. We've got 145,000 employees and distributors, and we're serving 93 million clients. So I had to look that up yesterday, same as anyone else would have to look up. But and we're in the finance industry, so we're a highly regulated industry, and we've got a lot of the same challenges that I heard Samia talk about earlier on. I understood enough to understand we've got the same challenges, and it's good for me to understand we've even got some of the same approaches to addressing some of those challenges. So group operations, we're actually present in 16 of those countries. So we operate in Europe, in Asia, in the US, in Mexico, for example. And we have over 6,000 employees, so quite a large organization. We're the infrastructure provider and the core IT application provider for the AXA Group. So we have a very diverse set of people that work in AXA Group Operations, from traditional infrastructure managers, operations, but we're trying to move towards a product-driven organization. So everything we do now, we're trying to build as products, and we make those products available to our customers, and our customers are therefore the DevOps teams, the security teams, the DevOps teams that are working to develop those IT applications used by AXA to run their business. We support nearly all of the AXA entities, and more recently we've become like an internal cloud provider for the AXA Group. So we provide some products. So we take some cloud services from the main cloud service providers that we want to work with, and those are like AWS, Microsoft Azure, GCP. We build some products that sit on top of those cloud service provider platforms, and we also act as a cloud broker. So we've got a lot of teams that work, they're co-located with the business. They sit in 16 of those countries, but they help them to integrate those cloud products and enable those cloud services into the AXA IT teams. My role, I lead the multi-cloud team in AXA. So my role is really to make it as easy as possible for our application teams to consume those cloud services in a safe way, so in a secure and compliant way, but make it so it's easy for them to consume those services, to move their applications into the cloud. We've got a huge program at the moment. It's called the Atlas program. But before I talk about that Atlas program, I really want to talk about our cloud strategy. So our cloud strategy has changed. About 5 years ago, we defined a cloud-first strategy. So all new applications, all new business applications should target cloud services, public cloud services. We had agile teams, agile development teams, feature teams, agile tribes, et cetera, et cetera. And we were trying to modernize all of our business applications. So we wanted the operating companies to modernize their business applications, to re-architect them, to re-platform them where possible, and move them to managed platform-type services. So we wanted to move away from the old way of delivering applications on server VMs, infrastructure services, et cetera. And we didn't see any benefit of moving those infrastructure services as is to the public cloud. So we wanted to focus on, function as a service, database as a service, all the serverless applications that you can get from those cloud service providers. We built our own container platform, so we could containerize our applications and run them in the public cloud. That was about 5 years ago. And then we started to, we built a private cloud infrastructure running in our core data centers. And then we came to the next refresh cycle. So we had a big decision to make. Do we refresh that private cloud service that we developed? Do we refresh all of our core IT services? Do we continue with the same data center approach? Or do we now make the jump and move everything towards the public cloud? And that's what the Atlas program is doing. So the cloud strategy has changed. We're looking to move everything to the public cloud. Now that gives a lot more challenges than relying on the cloud service providers for those modern managed cloud services. We now have to replicate a lot of the infrastructure management services also in the public cloud. So in order to do that kind of lift and shift migration, we've had to bring a lot of those management services, a lot of those operational capabilities into the public cloud. And that's what the Atlas program is doing. So Atlas program, it's a global cloud migration program. Objective to exit private Iaas and to exit our core IT, to do our core IT refresh in the cloud environment. The good news for me, it's still a multi-cloud strategy. So we're continuing with that multi-cloud strategy. We did look at again. We did say, do we want to partner with one strategic cloud provider, or do we want to continue our approach to use AWS, Microsoft Azure, GCP? And at the end of the day, we're an insurance company, so we're hedging our bets a little bit, and we wanted to spread the risk. And we're also quite regulated, so spreading that risk is quite important. So we still have that multi-cloud strategy. That's not changed. But some key principles for the migrations. We're not going to develop any cloud portals. We're not going to develop something that allows you to log onto a console and build your infrastructure in the public cloud. We're not trying to replicate what's already been done by the cloud service providers. So the key principles, everything is code and everything automated. So that Atlas program, to migrate these applications, everything must be fully automated. It must be fully infrastructure as code. And I'm sure you can imagine for those working in finance companies, we've got a lot of old applications, a lot of legacy applications. We don't have the source code to all of that. We don't have, they were all configured over many years. I see a lot of people nodding in agreement here. We don't have the infrastructure as code deployment. So we have to develop that, and we have to build those automation tools to develop that, to enable that migration to the public cloud. So the Atlas program itself, it's more than just a, it's more than just a migration. It's not just a lift and shift. We had to look at the whole IT landscape. We had to look at all of the management services, and we can't bring everything. We can't do everything at the same time. So we got some priorities. We want to exit our private Iaas end of this year, middle of next year. So we got some priorities. It means we cannot wait for everything. We can't move everything to the public cloud and then use that to do the migration. We have to be a bit pragmatic. So the Atlas program itself, just some stats. 40 entities around the world are involved in this. 600 people working on those cloud solutions, those migration factories. We really had to take a migration factory approach because there's only so many highly skilled technical people that can help to migrate business applications. If we want to migrate, and you've got the figures there, 6,000 business applications. Some said between 6,000 and 8,000, so I've gone on the conservative side, 6,000. But 13,000 virtual machines and 5,000 technical servers. I was quite amazed when I saw that. The number of technical services we have just to run our business applications is huge. So we couldn't do that just by a simple lift and shift. We had to take a migration approach, a factory approach, and build all the automation tools to enable that to happen. So where do we start? So about 5-6 years ago, we started to enable AWS, Microsoft Azure, and then a little bit later GCP. GCP for some very specific use cases, the big data, the business intelligence type stuff. But we enabled AWS and Azure. And we focused on building those foundations. So we did a lot of work to build the foundations. Whenever you create, and we've got something like 1,200 AWS accounts, something like 500 Azure subscriptions. So the foundations, the landing zones, I think Sami was referring them to, we had to fully automate that. And we did that about 4 or 5 years ago. Right? And we used Terraform for that. But it was Terraform Community Edition. We used Terraform, not for everything, but in some cases we used Terraform, and we built those landing zones, that foundation that can could support our new business applications. And we built this container platform based on IBM or Red Hat OpenShift. That container platform runs on Azure, runs on AWS, and we were using that for modernizing, replatforming a lot of our business applications. Then in 2020, one of our more mature operating companies, AXA Germany, in fact, they started an infrastructure automation project. So when we started, the DevOps teams, they were all using different tools. They were using Azure DevOps, they were using code pipeline, they were using CloudFormation. They were all using different CI/CD tooling. And in Germany, Germany's got a bit of a history of industrialization and really industrializing the operations and building those standard infrastructures. So AXA Germany CIO came to us and he said, we want to look at building a standard infrastructure as code platform based on, and they were using Terraform. They're using AWS and Azure, so they wanted something which went across both clouds. So we selected, they selected Terraform, but they wanted us to build that industrialized implementation. So that's when we first delivered Terraform Enterprise. So our German team, Group Operations Germany, built this Terraform Enterprise platform, and within about 9 months, I think, we'd migrated all of those DevOps pipelines to Terraform Enterprise, either just directly, so they're just using Terraform Enterprise and nothing else, with a VCS-driven workflow, or they moved some of those, they integrated their existing pipeline tools, and we started to build it. And then within 9 months, the diktat in Germany was everything now must use Terraform Enterprise. So it was a project that went to a kind of product which was only specific for Germany. And then when our strategy changed, when we decided now we're going to shift everything towards the public cloud, we had to build something. And as I said, we wanted to do it automated, we wanted to do everything as code. So I was asked to look at how can we support this migration? How can we support the entity teams to take their applications that exist today and move them into the public cloud? So I don't want to reinvent anything, so I just grabbed those people from AXA Germany and said, let's make this a global product. So a couple of years ago, we did exactly that. So we just looked at what was done in Germany, looked how they'd implemented Terraform Enterprise in a private network. It's actually hosted in AWS. And we took that and we made it into a global product. It's a multi-tenant implementation of Terraform Enterprise. I think we've onboarded something like 35 entities. And we're now using that for all of the migrations and all of the new business applications that are being deployed into that cloud environment. So we've enabled that infrastructure automation. Every application that we build today is using that Terraform Enterprise platform. Every migration from the on-premise private Iaas infrastructure, private cloud, Iaas infrastructure, all the servers that are being migrated are migrated using that Terraform Enterprise platform. And we've tried to fully integrate that into all the other AXA landscapes. So the monitoring tools, the configuration management databases, all of those other things, the networking, etc. And we've tried to build all of those features, some of which I saw we've built, and I saw announced earlier, some of those things are being replicated in the next versions of Terraform Cloud or hopefully Terraform Enterprise. So it's good news for us, but we've already done some of the work. But where do we want to go? So what we've seen is developers are a funny bunch. If you give them the tools to use to consume cloud services, if it works, they will just use it. They will use it. If you don't give them the tools, they're engineers. They're going to invent something. They're going to write it themselves. They're going to build it themselves. And they probably won't take into consideration all of the security or the compliance needs that we have. So our approach is not to mandate the use of something. is try to provide the services that those developers are asking for. So we've got a lot of community events that we have. We had a software engineering summit in Cologne 2 weeks ago, and our partners from HashiCorp joined us at that event. But we're really trying to listen to those developers, because if the developers are asking for something, and if we're not delivering it, if we're not making it easy for them to consume, I know they're just going to build it themselves, because they're engineers. So our approach is to try and build the services they're requesting, or even if they're not requesting, try and anticipate what they need and try to build those services and make it as easy as possible for them to consume secure, compliant, safe services. And I didn't understand everything of the previous presentation, but I think it was a very similar approach. Where do we want to go? Again, we want to increase the automation. So, you know, we're looking at GitHub Actions and Terraform run tasks. A lot of things that we're just going to improve. We're constantly evolving that platform. We want to take the approach. We've built those foundations. So we've got a team of cloud brokers today who will create landing zones. They will onboard an entity. But now they've done that integration, we want to make it really simple for those developers to spin up new environments, to build a kind of developer landing zone. So they don't need to know how to create an AWS account or which system to go and request an Azure subscription or resource group, whatever it is. We want to make it easy for them to have a module which they consume, and that just bootstraps the whole DevOps environment for their application. So that would include the networking, it would include all the monitoring tools, the integration to the identity management systems, etc. So really make it as easy as possible for developers to spin up new environments, develop their applications, and onboard their Terraform workspaces, ephemeral workspaces. Been talking about that for a long time. We've actually developed something of our own. I'll maybe show that a little bit later. So it's good to see that HashiCorp's direction is going in the same direction as we want to go. No code provisioning. Again, I mean, a bit of a buzzword maybe, I don't know. But again, if a developer wants a storage, an object store, just to store some data, then they'd be quite happy just to consume a module which creates an object store for them. And if they just put in some business attributes like the confidentiality level of their data, then we can build the storage bucket with the right encryption, with the right exposure, etc., etc. So again, the developers are quite happy, I think, to consume those services if we make it really easy for them to consume. So the no-code provisioning approach for us is working today. For the migration, for the server infrastructure, it's working. We're just saying it's this flavor. It's Windows 2019 running SQL Server. So we build those standard patterns. And then they're happy just to take that, build their applications, and use it. And we want to do the same. We want to expand that. So again, glad to see HashiCorp going in the same direction. And then we want to look at the SaaS model, because I'm running a platform team today. I don't want to do operations. I don't want to operate necessarily our Terraform infrastructure platform. Today, we're running some VMs. I mean, I'm sure you know how that works. We're running some VMs in AWS, which we have to maintain. We have to upgrade every month, because HashiCorp releases a new version with nice new features every month. And I really don't want to do that. So interested to see where the SaaS model will go and whether that will be appropriate for AXA. I'm hoping it will be. Okay, so I've got an architecture background, so I had to put a kind of framework up here. But you can see here, we've got Terraform sits really here in the cloud provisioning stuff. But let me just focus on this small piece down here first. So you've got those foundations. So we're using cloud services, AWS Azure, GCP. We've built that layer of foundation. Now, it's not a big layer that sits on top. It's really just the things that you need to do whenever you create a new account or subscription. It's the integration with IAM, it's the networking, it's the security services that must be configured. So we configure all of those in exactly the same way. Then we've built what we call MPI as a product. MPI is just a managed public Iaas. So that's just a kind of set of patterns that allow you to deploy secure and compliant virtual machines. We've got this open PaaS, we call it. It's an OpenShift-based container platform. We're running something like 20 clusters, OpenShift clusters around the world. 27,000 containers running in that platform. So again, making it very easy for the developers just to consume a container platform, and we build it for them. And then the native cloud services, which sit on top of that. So that's the kind of cloud platforms and products that we've traditionally been building. But then what we do, and I haven't got all the tools on here. I noticed on the previous slides, you've got Artifactory and, I don't know, check marks and all those other tools. They all exist up here as well. I've just not included them on the slide. But what we're trying to do here is have a managed Terraform Enterprise cloud provisioning service. And for all those native services or the products that we develop ourselves, to have standard modules that can just be consumed. And with those modules comes a set of policies. And those policies will tell you if they're compliant or not compliant. And I think slightly different to the last presentation, we're not actually enforcing many of those policies today. We are starting to work a lot closer with the security teams, but most of it today is advisory and we report, but I'll come on to that in a second. So for every new type of service or every product that we build, we're creating those modules, those standard modules, the set of policies that enable those developers to just consume and to build their business applications. As I said before, not all of our, I don't want to say legacy, not all of our core systems are yet migrated to cloud native services. They don't all have Terraform providers. We haven't written Terraform providers for them. So we still have to do a degree of automation to integrate those products into those back-end systems. So just an easy example, if you deploy a VM into AWS, an EC2 VM, we need to register that with a number of back-end systems. I don't know, it's Puppet, it's the identity systems, the privileged user access management systems, our configuration management database. And again, not all of those have Terraform providers. We haven't developed that yet. So what we do is if you're using those modules, we've got those foundations running in those cloud platforms. We've got a provisioning event. We can use that provisioning event to do some integration into those back-end systems. Now, eventually, we want to move all of that as part of the provisioning process, but it's not today. And we can't fix everything in one go. We've got, as I showed earlier, a lot of applications to migrate. So we've come up with this orchestration platform capability. It's event-driven, it's an API service, various workflows for registering services into those back-end systems. So scenario is developers, migration teams, they'll use the modules, they'll provision those services into the strategic provider platforms using our products. An event will happen, the event will trigger something, that something will do some integration into some back-end services. Now, because we've got all of that, we've got some very good insights to what's been deployed, some very good observability into the use of our products and the cloud services. So we just use the data lake technologies and we collect as much data as possible about all of the resources that we deploy into the public cloud. Actually, it's not only public cloud. We've got something on here we call pod. It's a point of distribution. That's just a VMware-based on-premise. There will be some stuff that we know will remain in our core data centers. We want to migrate everything, but we know we're not going to do it, and we're not going to do it immediately. But everything that gets deployed, we collect all the data about that into data lake technologies. So then we have some insights, and we can use tools like Power BI or other business intelligence tools to analyze that data and then to report. And that observability can go to the governance teams. It can be the architecture teams, it can be the finance teams, it can be the operations teams, and primarily the security teams who want to know those business applications are running in a secure environment, and we're not exposing our customer data on the public internet, for example. This is the responsibility of my teams. So we provide that provisioning capability, the orchestration capability, and the observability. The foundation stuff, that was my old role. Now that's being run by our Azure competency centers, and we've got competency centers based on the different technologies: Azure, AWS, GCP, OpenShift, etc. Ooh, wrong one. So finally, we had to, well, first of all, we run Terraform Enterprise itself. We just run it in AWS today. As I said, we want to look at moving that towards a SaaS service in the future. Maybe not. We also run a small instance for our Swiss operating company. They've got an implementation on Azure. So we've got both an AWS implementation, which serves most of our customers. But if anyone's worked in a Swiss company, you'll know that they want to keep everything in Switzerland, very highly regulated. So that's running in Azure, because Azure has a region in Zurich. So, but primarily our Terraform Enterprise implementation is in AWS. It's on a private network. And we've integrated it with all the other AXA services. We've integrated it with Power BI for reporting, with Dynatrace for monitoring. Obviously, we integrate with all of our CI/CD tools. We use them to deploy Terraform itself. And we back up all the state. We do all of those kind of things. And then this picture on the left, this is an old picture. It's not the latest figures. So, but we've done a lot of work on reporting the use of Terraform Enterprise. We built our own Workspace Explorer. So I just saw the announcement this morning. Maybe a lot of what we've done here will be replaced by out-of-the-box solutions provided by HashiCorp. But we've done a lot of work in taking all of that data, reporting the number of organizations. We've got reports which tell us, have we got compliant workspaces? Compliant workspaces mean, you know, they've got all the right policies attached. They've got all the right naming conventions being used. We've got reports which tell us about low-utilized workspaces, you know, workspaces that have been touched 7 months ago and then they've not been touched since. So probably either the resources are just there and never changing, or those resources are simply not used, in which case we've got other information which will tell us how much it's costing, and then we can look at removing those if necessary. So, summary, we started our journey, our cloud journey, as a enabling new managed services in the public cloud. We didn't initially see the benefit of migrating all of our workload. We've since changed. We've now got a large program. It's actually the largest program in AXA for the next 4 years to migrate all of our workload to the public cloud. We've done a lot of work to integrate Terraform Enterprise to ensure that everything that now gets deployed is infrastructure as code and is fully automated, so there are no manual provisioning actions, let's say. There's still going to be some operations which is manual. But we try and make sure that everything that now gets provisioned into the cloud will enable us to, in the future, maintain it, sustain it, and also, you know, reversibility is coming along. So will, in the future, we be able to take an application running in AWS and move it to Azure? I don't know, but that's maybe the long-term goal of where we want to be. And we could only do that by selecting a common tool, and the tool we selected was Terraform Enterprise. And that's it for me, and I think I've got 1 minute left.